we're going to be discussing Manchester United and Liverpool. Are Liverpool mounting a title challenge again this year, or are they falling off at a rapid pace? Manchester United, are they genuine title contenders or the pretenders? Welcome back to the channel, guys. I'm here with Darrenson and Ben, two of East London's finest football pundits. How you doing, guys?
Yeah, very well, thanks.
Good. And you, Ben?
Good to be here, mate. Good to be here.
Excellent, excellent. Cheers for joining us. Basically, just want to talk about Liverpool, United, potentially if we've got time, so a few other topics. But first off, just really wanted to cover basically Liverpool, how they're doing, sort of their title challenge so far, where we think they're going this season, where they're going to finish. Are they in a title battle, or actually is it a top four battle?
I think in terms of Liverpool's season so far, it's been very lopsided. Their record against the so-called Big Six has been fantastic. So head-to-head with the so-called Big Six, which includes Tottenham as well as Arsenal, they've got the best record. But against the bottom six is where they've been failing badly. So right now, in terms of where they're at, anything less than 3 points against City over the weekend means they're out of the title race. They're fighting for top four, and their focus will probably completely be on the Champions League. I think not having a crowd there, they play a high pressing game, high tempo. That's affected them, and that's allowed complacency to creep in to their games against the bottom six, and that's where I think they've massively failed this season. They might have to sort of play out the season like City did last year. They were 20 points behind Liverpool, and maybe it is a case of fatigue setting in and them needing to reset. So if they don't beat City over the weekend, I feel they're out of the title race. They will definitely still get top four, and their focus will lie with the Champions League. And they'll come back strong next season. It's not the end of an era for Liverpool. They're beating the top sides. One or two changes will transform their season.
The bottom 6 point is quite an interesting one as well. And you can see that Liverpool kind of lack the craft to break down these teams. Looking at the stats in terms of the way they play, there's not like a drastic change in like chance creation from their kind of key players in terms of the wing backs, the fullbacks, and even the chances that say Salah and Mane are getting, that hasn't drastically dropped off. It's just I don't know if it's a case of the fullbacks are putting in crosses where they're just not getting anywhere, or I don't know if it's just a case of people have kind of cottoned on how to play against Liverpool. But I don't see like a massive difference in the way they're attacking teams. It's just not working as well as it was last year. Their system has kind of been found out a bit.
Yeah, I agree with both your points, actually. But I'll throw this at you then. Obviously, injuries have hampered Liverpool. It's clear they have a huge injury list, like everyone does during these sort of unprecedented times with COVID. So we're all suffering, all the teams rather are suffering. But would you say not having a Van Dijk, not having Gomez, not having Matip is obviously pushing their midfielders back into defence, but also isn't actually giving them the platforms to success? But then if you add on top of that, regarding their creativity, I actually expected that to be up this year with Thiago. Do you also think that it's an element of Liverpool have lost that fear factor almost overnight?
Absolutely not. So I think with Thiago, he's come in to a brand new league. He's not played regularly with the first choice Liverpool midfield, first of all. And secondly, he is going to be a massively important player for them next season, especially with Wijnaldum leaving. He is very similar to Henderson. Thiago hasn't really played with, the Liverpool team, the Liverpool midfield that he's expected to play with, or that he wants to play with. So it's a makeshift one, which is reflected in his performances. In regards to Liverpool's defensive situation, yes, they've been massively hindered by no Virgil van Dijk, no Gomez, no Matip. Liverpool's game is all about breaking down attacks and then counter-attacking at speed. There's countless occasions last season where Henderson won the ball, or Fabinho won the ball. Henderson sent out a long ball to Mane, who ran around the back of the defence, or to Salah. They're not doing that this season, and that's a big issue for them.
Did you just compare Henderson and Thiago as similar players?
I kind of get where you're going with it. I mean, they are completely different levels in terms of from a technical perspective. But I guess you probably mean the kind of ability to create chances. And maybe no, I can see your face, Drew. You're thinking what? But Henderson is up to speed with the way Liverpool play. And when I watch Thiago in that Liverpool team, I can see players that honestly are not at his level of football IQ. I don't think they're ready for him personally. I do agree with Hans in the sense of I don't think Thiago will be playing at that base next season. I think he will be on the right-hand side or the left-hand side. And that will allow the way he's playing to be more effective because he doesn't really stay. If he sees an opportunity to go, he's going to go because he's only ever really played in teams that dominate the ball, Barca and Bayern. So there's no real issue in him going. And also, his time at Barca was quite short, but he played out wide quite a lot. And then at Bayern, he was generally in a 2. So he wasn't like the sole holder, like even last year for Bayern, it was like him and Leon Goretzka. So he had more of a platform to kind of join the attack, almost more like a number 8 rather than a number 6. And so I think the combination of these things, not having the right midfielders next to him, the Liverpool players not really understanding how to play with a guy with this level of technical ability, and him really playing in a holding role where it isn't really for him. And you can see that kind of Klopp's switched to Milner to do that now.
Sorry, I just want to quickly clarify my my Thiago point. So my point with Thiago is
he is very similar to Henderson.
Klopp is obviously an admirer of Thiago. He found an opportune moment to sign him, so he bought him. Decent amount, wasn't a huge transfer fee, etc. Klopp is not going to change his whole system to accommodate Thiago. He wants Thiago to fit into that system. So that's what the point that I was merely trying to make was Liverpool are, they counterattack efficiently, quickly, and what they're looking to do is, quickly win the ball, send it to Henderson and Thiago, and then they set one of the front three through on goal. Like that, that's why I said he's similar in terms of his expectations, in terms of what he's required to do.
Yeah, I agree. But the problem I have with Liverpool and Klopp is the first to bang on about, playing, not having the 5 subs. He's the first to moan about everything. However, when you actually break it down, people like Robinson and Trent, for example, he plays them every single time he gets a chance. Yeah, when realistically they could be playing absolute nobodies in the Champions League. It's a dead cert for a victory, and they stay on for 90 minutes, like the Atlanta result. Take off your Mo Salahs, take off your Manes, take these players off the pitch after 60 minutes. He doesn't do it. He never does. Then he's the first to moan. So I think they've caused their own issues there a little bit.
In regards to Liverpool's defensive situation, yes, they've been massively hindered by no Virgil van Dijk, no Gomez, no Matip. For me, I think one of the mistakes Klopp made was selling Lovren. Nearly every good Premier League team has at least 4 good centre-backs or 4 centre-backs within their squad that they could rely on. Liverpool, without their first choice centre-backs, are expected, their backup options are a 19-year-old Reece Williams who's only played non-league football, for example. Nat Phillips, who's not good enough.
I know what you're saying about the mistake with selling Lovren, but hindsight is like quite easy to kind of look back on. And I think maybe not replacing Lovren might have been a thing, but it's a very freakish season to say all 3 of my first choice centre backs are all going to get injured. And then it's almost like the forward situation. He's brought in, Jota to compete with the front 3, which is exactly what he was doing. Give them a different option, give them some fire up their belly, give them some real competition. And he was doing that and then gets a long-term injury. Like, what was he meant to do? Bring in 2 Jotas?
I feel like Liverpool have relied very much on their home record, the energy, and actually Mo Salah and Mane. And it's highlighted, this moment has absolutely highlighted why Firmino's not the man. I see, Ben, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I mean, Firmino's a debatable one. To kind of finish off on Thiago real quick before I talk about those points. I I do feel like the signing of Thiago was opportunistic, but it did, and it kind of fits into the, not I say the Liverpool model because they generally go for younger players, but basically picking up a bargain. It was a little bit like signing Shaqiri. They were like, this really makes sense. I mean, Thiago is not a 20 million pound player, and that's what they paid for him, and it's 5 million a season for 4 years. It's ridiculous. You can't really pass up on that opportunity. But he also offers a kind of different type of craft to what their other midfielders have, and we've always said they've never really replaced Coutinho. And Thiago is different to Coutinho, but he can spot those cute little passes and see things that other players can't see. And I'm not convinced that anyone else in that Liverpool midfield can see the passes that Thiago can see. It doesn't mean they can't play good passes. I do agree with the kind of piece around keeping some of the key players on, and you see some of that at Man United, and we'll come to that. Where certain players just never get dropped, never get rested, and then it's like, oh, we don't have enough subs or whatever. I can't speak for the Atalanta game. I do know that there's, Liverpool, and I've said this to you guys before, football's ultimately a business, and we've talked about money. And if you win the FA Cup this year, you'll make £3.4 million in total. And if you win a Champions League game, you'll get 2.5 mil just from winning one group game. And if you draw, it's 900,000. So that £1.6 million swing between winning a game and drawing a game is massive, especially when you're talking about no revenue from fans and, the kind of pandemic that footballers are in at the football team, well, we're all in at the moment. So I don't think it's necessarily, just a Klopp thing. I think maybe a game like Atalanta, he keeps his forwards on because they want to get goals. It's a little bit like why Ronaldo and Messi never come off for Barca, because they want the goals, they want the tally, they want the opportunities to get hat-tricks. When they played that Midtjylland team, and it was like a dead rubber for both teams, and they ended up drawing, and Jota played and Salah played, and then Jota got injured and now he's out. Like, people say, why did he play? But there's definitely a financial element to that. And you can see that in the domestic cups where Klopp doesn't take them seriously. Why? Because his bosses don't care about it.
I personally think Liverpool, if they beat City, they are still in the title race. It's still going to be tough for them due to the injuries and the way they've been playing. But if they were to lose to City, I think top 4 is going to be a challenge, considering their form, their home form recently, and actually the aura around the team has completely changed, where now everybody and anybody thinks that they can beat them. A little bit like an Arsenal team under Arsene Wenger were always considered a great team, but no one ever took them seriously to win the title. And Liverpool are really falling into that mold.
I see it completely differently from you. I think Liverpool still have that fear factor. I just think Liverpool have been enormously unlucky with injuries. Liverpool, for me, they're going through a massive blip, but everyone knows they'll come out of it. Well, I feel, most people feel that. For me, top 4 is not even in, it's not a question. They will get top 4. If they beat City, they've still got a chance for the title. If they don't get 3 points, I think they'll concentrate on the Champions League. So for me, the way I see Liverpool, the rest of the season panning out is if they beat City, they'll keep trying to go for the title, as well as focusing on the Champions League. If they don't beat City, I think it gives Klopp a chance to blood some youngsters, to rest some of his key players for matches in the Champions League. Liverpool on their day with their fully, a fully fit squad, or as much of a fully fit team as they can put out, are dangerous for anyone in Europe. So for the Champions League is a very realistic possibility for them. I think they'll need to, if they don't beat City, they need to do what City did last season. Like, they're mentally fatigued, physically fatigued, rest some of your key players, come back strong next season. Over the summer, try and replace Firmino, maybe sign a right back to challenge Trent. Trent needs someone, someone like Pereira for Leicester. He's way better defensively than Trent. So maybe, you need to sort of challenge Trent for that starting spot. And I think that they need to sign a central midfielder to replace Wijnaldum as well.
I think they have to beat City to stay in the title race. Just from a mental perspective, I think City would take a draw on the weekend. And if Liverpool don't win that game, I think they're out of the title race. I think the Champions League is very separate. It's a cup competition. Anything can happen there. And Liverpool got pedigree. So I'm not so worried about them in that competition. But in terms of the Premier League, they've got to win that game to stay in the title race. I think in terms of top four, the biggest thing for me is the form of Leicester. I think United look pretty solid for top four, as do obviously City. Chelsea, I think, are looking pretty good under Tuchel, and we can talk about that another time. But that would be a worry for me if I was a Liverpool fan. But it's Leicester. I think if Leicester keep up the form and they're a genuine threat, I do think Liverpool could be in trouble if their key player is not on song, and that is absolutely Mo Salah. If you go back to some of the games where they've dropped points, I think about the Newcastle game, I think about the West Brom game. Salah had some really good chances in those games. And if he scores them, which he did last season, this season isn't as bad. They're probably in second place. They're probably only 5 points behind City. Playing them on the weekend is completely different. So I do think it's just a blip. I do think they'll get back to form fairly quickly. And I do think, when they're not playing the smaller games, it will be a lot better from them. So I do think they'll make top four quite comfortably in the end. But it's not going to be as straightforward as some people might think.
Yeah. Okay. So quickly then, a score prediction. I'll sort of put my neck on the line first. I'm actually going to go with a 1-1. I think Man City would be happy to take a draw, like you mentioned. That's going to be my score prediction, and it's at Anfield as well. But with the injuries, I'm just going for a 1-1. Ben?
So I was going to say 1-1, but I think it's going to be quite high scoring. I think City have just been in cruise control over the last few weeks, and maybe Liverpool coming at them quite intently, knowing they need to win, is probably going to make it a high scoring game. I'm going to say Liverpool are going to win, and I'm going to go for 3-2.
I'm surprised, Ben, you predicted a Liverpool win because, I didn't think you would. I've gone for exactly the same. I think Liverpool will win 3-1. I think they'll score first, take a 2-0 lead, maybe City get one back, and then Liverpool nick another one at the end.
Okay, perfect. Right, that concludes Liverpool then. Let's move over to a topic I know that most people will be interested to talk about is Man United. Is it a sort of purple streak? Is it just luck? Or has Ollie turned the corner and are Man United actually title contenders?
In a word, no. For me, they're not title contenders. And the main reason for that is...
have they ever been for you?
They were close to being. It's just the way they set up in the big games and the results against the teams in the so-called Big Six. So, I know you guys haven't always agreed with me, but I do feel mentally it does make, those games are key. And United scoring 1 goal in 6 games against the so-called Big Six is massively, problematic. They went to an understrength Liverpool team that were playing 2 makeshift defenders, and they didn't go for the win until sort of the last 10 minutes. They settled for, a home draw with Chelsea this season. They played out a bore draw with City. And I feel Ollie sets his team up to not lose. And then when they're still in the game, he'll go for it maybe in the last 5-10 minutes. And for me, that's not a title winning mentality.
I think if you are only a few points off the top, you're nearly 2/3 of the way through the league and you are up there, especially if you've got the ambition to win the league, which I think a club like Manchester United will always have to have, whether the players or the manager want it or not. Then I do think the challenges. Whereas with Leicester, as much as they're near enough on the same points as us, maybe a couple behind, their ambition isn't to win the league. Not at all. I think the players will quietly go about it and maybe hope, but if you offered them 4th now, they'd probably snap your hand off. Whereas I don't think United necessarily would. I think they can still smell an opportunity. I do agree with Hans in the sense of, I'm not sure if the personality is there within the squad to really capitalize. I think the main thing for United is they haven't had any injuries, like not serious ones. You look at City losing Jesus and Aguero for an extended period of time, and they have not performed like a team that doesn't have a striker. Liverpool, massive centre-back injuries and issues there. Even other teams like Arsenal really struggling with injuries, Leicester losing Vardy. United haven't really had that. Like someone who's irreplaceable, like Bruno Fernandes or an Aaron Wan-Bissaka. We haven't lost a guy like that to injury. We haven't lost those kind of players. Everybody that's been out has had an admirable replacement come in, like whether it's Eric Bailly for Lindelof or Mason Greenwood for Martial or something like that. And I do think that lack of injuries that we've had has been able to maintain us through this kind of season. In a normal season, I don't think we'd be in the position we're in, because I think the other teams would have more points. But this season, I think we definitely are challengers. My worry is, have we had our true blip yet? Every team has a blip in the season. And maybe we just had it, the 2 games where we just got 1 point out of Sheffield United and Arsenal. But I'm not convinced the blip is over. And that's my concern.
Yeah, so just like you mentioned, under a normal season and circumstances, I would have said United have no chance, right? But I'm looking and I'm going historically this season and just talking about this season. Football's been strange, right? Man City started and I thought I was looking at Pep going, he's a fraud. He's got to get the sack. Like, he's not performing with all that money and the players that he bought, and it's not working. And now all of a sudden they're top and they're clear. They're looking like the best team. However, I can see a 5-game streak where they only pick up 3 points or 6 points, something like that. And Man United, as much as I believe they will have a blip, they are literally like sniffing. They're just sniffing about, and they're just there. They're not falling off the pace. They're setting a higher pace than Liverpool, Leicester, etc. And if the results go their way this weekend, i.e., let's just say Liverpool win, like Man United are there or thereabouts with players who, you can argue Martial hasn't even hit form. There's certain players that are there to still add and give more to this season for them. And I'm actually concerned that they're not going to win it, but I don't have any faith in City, Liverpool, or any of the teams that I thought were going to put runs together. I don't actually have any faith in them to do so. So that's why I think 100% Man United are title contenders, and I'm worried if they win the league. Darrenson, I know you said you don't think that they can win the league, but you didn't give me a reason why you think, for example, City will win the league or Liverpool will win the league, or why are you so strongly against United? Is it a bias because other people support them, your friends support them? What is it?
And where do you think they'll end up if they won't win? Do you think top 4 is a guarantee?
Yeah, so I think they'll definitely get top 4. I think Man United have played great football. Don't get me wrong. I think United are arguably the best attacking side in the league. My issue is they don't impose themselves in big games. So their biggest strength is by far their attack. But when they line up in these bigger games, they played an Arsenal team without 3 of their best players. Arsenal are languishing in 10th. Like, United should take the game to them. They were very, they played within themselves. And that's where I had the issue. I think to be a title winning team, play your A game. Like, you impose yourselves on the opposition. Don't go toe to toe with the big guys. And to touch on your point, Drew, about Martial maybe not finding form, Man City have still got De Bruyne and Aguero to come back. So if you're worried about Martial not finding his form, City then are in a way better sort of place in order for their best players to come back. The other thing that I do also think that plays into City's hands is their Champions League fixture with easy opposition. So they've got 3 or 4 tough games to go before that Champions League tie. So I believe they've got Liverpool away, Spurs home, Everton away before that tie. So I feel Guardiola is going to put out his best possible 11 before that Champions League tie, try and win those games. And then after that Champions League game, he's got an easy enough fixture list. So I think he's got enough players to rotate with, but most importantly, he's got his tough fixtures out of the way before that Champions League tie. So, for me, United won't win the league simply because they don't play their A game in the big games. And secondly, because of the strength of opposition. And also, just to touch on one last point, you said if Liverpool win this weekend, that plays into Man United's hands. I think the opposite. I think that gives Liverpool a massive sniff of the title again. So I think Liverpool losing will help United because then it becomes a straight out 2-horse race.
Yeah, but that doesn't help Man United win the league, though. That helps Man United basically coast into second place. We're talking about actually winning the league. I think if Liverpool were to beat Man City, you're talking about a team that, you know, if they win, they are actually only 3 points behind. And the belief around that squad with players still to hit form, personally, I think United are definitely title contenders. But look, we're speaking ahead of the weekend. We don't know. But I mean, over to you, Ben.
So I said it before. The big games, ultimately, we're always going to set up with McFred in midfield, right? And that's not necessarily to say we are not going to impose ourselves in the game, but it's honestly just an energy thing. United have a lot of midfielders, but we don't have a great midfield, if that makes sense. Fernandes is obviously the clear out and out number 10, but the two behind him, it really changes based on who we're playing. And if we need the energy to match the other team, it's always going to be Fred and McTominay. You'll regularly see Matic and Pogba playing games where we're going to dominate possession, a Sheffield United or a Burnley or a Fulham. Like that's the two that will play in those games. When it's high energy, we need to be able to run with these teams, and those two midfielders just don't do it to the same level. I do think from a attacking perspective, I don't see like our forwards playing any differently. I don't think there's a really defensive side to our wingers in those games. I don't see loads of people behind the ball all the time and really just trying to play on the counter attack. I do think we still try and play, but you've got to remember that everything good about Manchester United goes through Bruno Fernandes, and he plays a high risk, high reward game. There is no one, I'd say, in Europe that plays to the same level of progressive passing that he does. He is consistently trying to move that ball forward and create chances. And in the games against Liverpool and City, where we don't have the same amount of possession, we're not going to dominate the ball. His high risk strategy doesn't always pay off, makes us tired, we get less possession. And it just means that we look more defensive than we are. But there's no doubt that Bruno isn't as impactful in the big games. And that is really down to the style of play. We can afford to take lots of chances when we're going to have lots of the ball. And that's why his strategy works. But in those games against Liverpool and City, it's less likely to work. And that is really ultimately the way that Man United play and the creative side in and around that. So I think, like I said, we're contenders because we've got a big squad of match winners as well. And I've said this to you guys before. If you've got at least 3 players that are going to get you 10 to 15 league goals in a season, you have a chance of winning the league. Fernandes is on 12, Rashford's on 8 or 9. I think Martial and Cavani might only be on 4 or 5, but it wouldn't shock me if all 4 of those had, like, you know, Cavani and Martial could easily have 10 by the end of the season, and Rashford and Fernandes could have 15 plus. And if you've got that coming from 4 attackers, not including the likes of Pogba and Greenwood, who can still get goals, you've got goals in your team, you've got a strong chance. I'd put us up there. But I do agree with Hans in the sense of, do we truly have the belief as a squad that we deserve to be there? I think some of the players believe that, like Fernandes, but I'm not convinced the squad does.
Fair enough. So where are you going to finish?
Ask me in 4 games. I think we're going to finish second or third. I think Chelsea are going to have a lot more to say than people realise this season.
Darrenson, where are United finishing?
Yeah, I agree with Ben. Second or third. I think Leicester will fade away and Chelsea will get 4th. Sorry, can I just touch on one point that Ben made? Ben, so I completely agree about Bruno Fernandes. He's absolutely crucial to everything good about Man United. You know, everything goes through him. So far, in 6 league games, you guys have scored 6 games against, say, the top 6, the so-called big 6. You've scored 1 goal, and he's, you know, he's not been up to his usual high standards. What changes?
I don't know if it's like, again, off the top of my head, I'd have to have a think. But for me, I don't expect Bruno to play as consistently in the big games as he does against other teams. Like, No one does. It's the same as, similar to, I guess, when people go and play for England, right? It's very rare they replicate their club form consistently. But the output is nowhere near the same in those big games. And that's the team as a whole. But Bruno is very much the focal attacking point of that team. And he has absolute complete freedom almost in the way that he plays. He's got more freedom than Kevin De Bruyne, who is, in my opinion, a more talented player in a better team. And across Europe, we've talked about it before. There's not really lots of teams playing a number 10. No one has anywhere near the output of Bruno in terms of the ones that are playing. But with all that freedom and, it's also like the players around him, although I think there might be some better players in other teams, he's still got what the type of midfielder he needs, which are runners and people willing to make those runs. And the setup is there for him to do it. He just needs to deliver, and he's definitely got the personality for it. It's just not showed in the numbers so far. I do think he tries too hard. I think the big games he has performed in, it's been when he's come off the bench and maybe he's been a bit fresher, and the teams that he's played against have been tighter. Liverpool in the FA Cup, RB Leipzig in the Champions League the first time around, to name two of them. But there's definitely an element where maybe he needs to adjust his game slightly to make sure that in the key moments he's pulling things off, whether that's goals or assists.
That's right. In terms of Bruno, he does need to sort of up his game in bigger games. But that's the main reason for me that United don't win the league this year, because I feel they've got 4 or 5 big games to come, and unless something drastically changes, I just don't see them winning those games. And the other point I would make, I know United make a lot of comebacks in matches, when they're sort of winning from behind, but sometimes it feels as though they need to be behind in order to sort of wake up. It's bizarre. It's really bizarre. And the other thing I would say is in terms of managers and in-game tacticians, I don't think Solskjaer's the best in-game tactician. So, for example, when Arsenal played United, Arteta obviously saw that sort of Martinelli wasn't having much joy on the left-hand side, and we replaced him very quickly with Willian. And Arsenal had a lot more joy. And, they played a lot better in the second half. And, the change from Solskjaer, he didn't really make a quick change, or he didn't really negate that. He didn't really do anything in game to change the way that United were playing. And I think Arteta outsmarted him there. And in order to win a title, you are going to have key pivotal moments where you need to make a change. And I don't know whether Solskjaer's got the experience or the know-how to do that.
I don't think it's about experience or know-how. I think, to be honest, I think Ollie relies on Mike Phelan for a lot of that, who was Sir Alex Ferguson's assistant. Even tactically, he leans on him quite heavily for that kind of thing. I think the main reason is trust. I think we talk about Ollie needing to change things, but he doesn't seem to trust enough of the squad. I think outside of the kind of core lineup, and then maybe what he could do in centre midfield to be a bit more defensive or a bit more offensive, we've got a lot of players in the squad: Jesse Lingard, Daniel James, Juan Mata, and he doesn't trust them. And that's really what it comes down to. You can say, what is he changing? He doesn't take Rashford off because he doesn't trust James. He doesn't trust Mata. He doesn't trust Donny van de Beek. He can say what he wants about, he needs time to adapt. He didn't give Bruno any time to adapt. And yes, it's a different situation, but I always think that's a nonsense argument. It's the same with the age thing. If you're good enough, you're old enough. It's just about trust. And he always feels like the players on there will find a way to make it work. And that's what it comes down to. I don't think it's necessarily a tactical thing. I think it's more trust.
The question, I wanted to sort of jump in and just say why actually, look, I don't love Man United, as everyone will know. I'm an Arsenal fan. But what I find refreshing about them is this is the first group of players and the first team I've seen since a Wenger team, a peak Wenger team, or the 2008 one, that is literally thrown on the pitch with a direction of how the manager wants them to play football, but no systems, no very clear structures and how they break teams down. It's the players are making the system. The players are making things happen. Bruno's got freedom. Cavani has freedom because they're good players, right? So Rashford's doing what he needs to do. No one is really given a set instruction apart from maybe the two sort of pivots in midfield, right? Apart from your Fred and McTominay. Other than that, look, United can't play the ball out from the back. They're trying, but bless them, it ain't happening. But who cares? Because when they're getting forward, they don't have the same attacks one after another. It's a completely different attack every single time based on good players making good decisions, different movement, and a very different style of play to anybody else because it's a throwback. And Ollie's getting that out of the players, whether or not you think he's a good manager. I personally don't think he's a good manager, but ultimately, he is getting a lot out of this current Man United team. They have no reason to be where they are in the league based on what we've seen in the past. And I'm starting to look at them and go, they're probably my favourite team to watch because they are a throwback and I prefer football to be played like that rather than a Man City approach or a Liverpool approach. Back to you, Ben.
It's almost a Harry Redknapp style of management where he's like, you're a good player, get out there, give him some confidence. And I'm not saying, oh, he's better than Redknapp at that. He was, phenomenal. But he is allowing the players to do not what they want. Like there is an element of what the wingers should do. Sometimes you see them a bit wider. Sometimes we're a bit more counter-attacking. Sometimes we do focus attacks more down the left. But in terms of general play, he's gonna lean on the players to find their own ideas. And whether there's definitely an element of luck to it. Nobody thought Bruno would be as good as he was. We weren't even sure if we'd still have Pogba. No one thought that Greenwood would end up being quite a decent right winger. And that Cavani would still be as good as he is. So there is definitely an element of luck to that, but they still have to make those calls, bring those players in, give these players the chances. Ollie was the one that gave Greenwood the chance. Regardless of whether we think we would have got Cavani, if we'd have got Sancho or whatever, they've still made that call. They've still made it work. And they are entertaining to watch. And like I said, I do think having a number 10 makes a difference. You can see that with Arsenal, with Emile Smith-Rowe. Playing a player in there with a bit more freedom that knows how to play the role does make a big difference.
I agree. I think United play fantastic football. They're a great team to watch. Them along with maybe say Aston Villa and Southampton are one of my favourite teams to watch, and Leeds. And if United are still in the title race, then great. Like we do need someone else to sort of be in the title hunt. It's been a bit boring with Man City and Liverpool dominating so much. So, if they do it, my gut tells me that they will falter at some point, and that's mainly down to their results against the other big teams. But yeah, let's see how it goes.
Okay, perfect. Well, thanks for joining us, people. You've heard it here from Ben. United are back, and Man City are walking the league. Comment below and let me know your thoughts.